The difficult we do immediately. The impossible takes a little longer. While this quote's been around for a long time, it is commonly associated with the U.S. military in World War II. The variations of this quote have been around even longer than that. I want to go to Matthew 5:44. This is in the Beatitudes, and I want to talk a little bit about the idea of praying for the despiteful. It says, "But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you." Now, again, part of the Beatitudes. So, when we look at that, it says, it's Jesus speaking. And the first thing you have to understand is the audience. Who's Jesus speaking to? It's just not speaking to the masses. This is speaking to those that would try to be believers, those that would try to be followers, those that would try to be disciples. And so, some of the things we've been talking about in this mercy management series is things that not everyone will necessarily embrace, because it kind of rubs against our flesh sometimes when we get the idea that we need to love our enemies, or we need to have mercy, or we need to forgive, we need to do these things because we justify ourselves. I'm right in this, or I was wronged in this, or whatever it might be, okay? But this is Jesus speaking to those that would want to follow. This is Jesus speaking to his disciples, to those that would want to be disciples, kind of thing. And it's, the audience here matters. But if we look at it, it says that we should love our enemies, bless those who curse us, do good to those who hate us, and pray for those who spitefully use and persecute us. And it's not a mistake when somebody spitefully uses you. That's not a mistake. In other words, they did it with intent. And it's much more than just loving our enemies. It is wanting to do what God wants us to do. It's wanting to be a disciple. It's wanting to walk in those steps. And you can say, well, I don't care about that. I'm a good person. I just want to have things good with God so I can go to heaven. I just don't want to miss out on heaven. That's all I want. I'm not trying to be, a saint or a great person or whatever. But see, we want to draw closer to God. We want to have a relationship with God. We want to walk in that capacity. And one of the things I've talked about many, many times over the years is, do I go to church with the idea of, God, how can you use me? How can you minister through me today, God? Or do I go there, what am I going to get? So am I in a get mode? What am I going to get? What am I going to get? What am I going to get? Or am I in a ministry mode? What am I going to be able to give? What am I going to be able to do? What am I going to be able to help someone? And that makes a big difference in the approach. So again, speaking to kind of the disciples, if you will, loving your enemies is a step up, right? This is part of ministering to those around us. When we can love our enemies, it's a ministry to them of the goodness of God, of the change that God makes in us spiritually when we're truly following Him, etc. So it's a step up kind of thing. Now, that in itself should be a good motivator. I want to do what I can to be closer to God, to be a better Christian, to be a better follower of Christ, to be a better vessel that He can use for His glory, etc. That's kind of the mindset that's there and present in this discussion, if you will. But it really comes down to these three things: love, do good, and pray. So love is supposed to be one of the things that is evidenced in our life. Love, like God has loved us, we can pass on godly love to others. We can show love. And then do good. Well, we want to do good. We want to be ones that do well and follow God's word. And then pray. And sometimes we struggle with that one too. But so who are we supposed to love? Well, it says in the previous verse, you've heard it said that you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Oops, my enemies. Love your enemies. And then it says, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. So love who? Your enemies. To love your friends is theoretically easy, right? To love your enemies requires us to be merciful, requires us to be forgiving, requires us to love more than hate, when hate is the thing that's kind of the emotion du jour, if you will, the emotion of the day. So we want to love who? Everyone. And if we're going to love our enemies, that predefines that we've decided this is someone who's my enemy. Wouldn't it be even better if what we pre-decided is it wasn't going to matter, that we were going to love them no matter what? The Bible talks about God's love being an unconditional love. And I can tell you that of all the things I've ever taught on, when I taught on that, I alienated tons of people because they don't want the idea that you can love unconditionally. They all want to put conditions on it. Well, I can love that person, but not if they do this. Well, that's not unconditional then, is it? You're not showing that love of God. He loved us before he even died on the cross. He loved us first, and he loved us unconditionally. And when we start thinking, well, who should be loved and who shouldn't be loved, we've already stepped into a place where we're putting ourselves above someone else, where we're saying, well, God loved me, but I don't need to love them because, you don't understand how they are, or you don't understand what they did, or whatever it is. We've started setting conditions down. So he says, love your enemies. Well, if you can love your enemies, you should be able to love your friends and acquaintances and strangers you meet. You should be able to show love towards them, kindness and the love of God. And then the second thing it says is to do good. So, there's a stigma, if you will, where people are like, oh, they're just a do-gooder. But it's okay with me. I would be a do-gooder. I would do good if I could. That's what I want to be able to do. And so it says that we're supposed to do good. And then I want to flip to the exact verse again here. It says, but I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you. So that's still kind of in the loving thing. Do good to those who hate you. Whoa. Someone hates me, I can't be getting vengeance and doing, eye for an eye and, whatever. No. Do good, even if somebody hates me, do good, right? So if they hate you, do good to them anyway. Don't let someone else's problems cause you to stop doing good, to stop doing what God would have you do, to stop being able to be loving, to show mercy, to give a cup of cool water, so to speak, but continue to do what the things that God has given you to do them well, do them with the best of your ability, in spite of how someone may think towards you. And, one of the things I want to talk about is, we get into our own heads a little bit and we overthink things. And a lot of us do this, where we get into our own heads, we overthink things. And so we start mapping out conversations that never happened, never will happen, where we're going to say this and they're going to say that, and this other thing's going to happen. And all of these things are going to go on, but none of it's anything other than speculation driven by emotion and overthinking on our part. And so as soon as we get the idea that I'm going to show mercy, I'm going to love even my enemies. I'm going to be a loving person, and I'm going to do good even to those who don't like me. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to treat them fairly. I'm going to do good in spite of all those things. I'm going to do good. When we get in that mindset, man, that's powerful. And it's like Christ when I can do that. It's walking in the pattern he set for us. And it's a great and amazing thing. If we can do good, even to the people that, we could justify not doing good for, I'm not going to do good for them for this. But when I take the idea that I'm going to do good for them in spite of all that, I'm still going to do good. That's powerful. That's very powerful stuff. So if you've ever been in a situation where someone has treated you poorly and you've done good, man, it feels right? It feels right. If you get past the overthinking part, it feels very right. Furthermore, the Bible tells us, that when we do these things, when we treat people that way, when we're loving, kind, and merciful, and all those things to our enemies, it creates a situation where it's like heaping hot coals on their head, where, in other words, they're convicted more and quote unquote, I don't want to say suffer because that's the wrong term, but where they're more aware of their own behavior because of our showing the proper behavior, and it gives an opportunity for God to minister to them, if that makes sense. Okay, so that opens up that avenue. So of the three things, we have love, do good, and then pray. Now pray, it says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man, wrong verse, I apologize. It says, there we go. Okay. It says, but I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. So pray even for the people who do stuff on purpose to cause you harm or disrespect or whatever. Pray for them. That's really important. I pray for them, and prayer is powerful in that it can change things. Prayer can change their life. You can pray that God will bless them. You can pray that God will bring them to a greater understanding, bring them to salvation, that he'll bring them, closer to him. You can pray those things for someone, and that's a right thing. Rather than praying, God, bless them with a brick, you can just say, God bless them, bring them closer to you, Father. That allows for God to work in their life. In other words, you're now praying for God to do things to help them. All right, and that may seem kind of weird, but here's the thing that happens, and I've said this many times in counseling with married couples and that sort of thing. Tell them, pray for your spouse. They might be in the middle of getting a divorce, things are going real haywire. Pray for your spouse. Why? Well, one, if you pray for your spouse every day, if you pray for someone every day, and you can pray for them multiple times a day even, but if you pray for somebody every day, the compassion of God, and we talked about that a little bit last week, the compassion of God can start to move in your heart where you feel compassion for them, even though maybe they've wronged you, maybe they've hurt you, etc. And as I can do that, as I can pray for them, then that opens up an avenue where I'm looking for God to answer that prayer and do something positive in their life. But beyond that, when I pray for somebody on a continual basis, when I'm praying for them to be blessed of God, etc., it starts to change me. I start to have a different attitude and a different approach to that person. God's compassion starts to come to work, and I start wanting to see God do more in their life. I start feeling something where I want to see God move, and I start having a different feeling towards that person, because the prayer, while I'm praying for God to do something for them, God is also doing something within me with regards to that. God is touching my heart, my life, and in that process. And so one of the things I noted here is, don't let your emotions steal your joy. In other words, when I pray for someone and I'm seeing God move in their life and God's working on my heart, etc., I can rejoice in that and be very happy in that, or I can start getting all frustrated because I'm overthinking it and I haven't let go and I don't want to let go and all those things. And so it can end up stealing my joy instead of saying, God, I thank you because you're answering prayer. God, I thank you because you are blessing them. God, I thank you because I'm seeing movement in their life in a positive direction. And God, I thank you because, you've spoken to me and touched my heart and all those things. Instead of that, I get all twisted up and I'm upset about it. That's silly. Don't let your emotions steal your joy. Rejoice in what God is doing and rejoice in the prayers that he's answering. Rejoice when you see God moving in someone's life, particularly someone you're praying for. And then prayer is a weapon. And, many years ago, and I don't even remember where exactly it started, I ran across the idea of prayer targets. And I've talked about this in the past, probably several years ago the last time. But prayer targets, the idea of a prayer target, and I think it might have been Rick Renner, but I don't know. The idea of a prayer target is that, prayer is a weapon that we have. And there's different types of prayers. But when we set up a prayer target, we take something where maybe I'm being challenged, something where maybe I'm struggling with a temptation or whatever it might be. So let's say, just for an example, I am tempted by chocolate, and I just think I've got to eat chocolate all the time, and I just struggling with this, and I want to get past that issue with chocolate, and I have Joe at the butcher shop who has treated me poorly, and I want to see him saved, etc. So what happens with a prayer target is I say, okay, I'm going to make Joe at the butcher shop my prayer target, and the trigger to that is going to be when I start craving chocolate. And so what happens is I make this commitment that when I'm starting to crave chocolate, instead of giving into the craving for chocolate, I'm going to pray for Joe at the butcher shop. And so I'm sitting there, it's 9:30 in the morning, and I start thinking, man, I could really use a piece of chocolate. And I start praying, God, touch Joe at the butcher shop, help him realize that he can't treat people poorly, and God, bring him to a understanding of you and relationship with you. And I pray for Joe until I don't have the craving for the chocolate. Then, maybe 10:30 strikes again, so I start praying for Joe again. And I pray until I don't have the craving for chocolate. And you just go out throughout the day like that. And what I'll tell you from experience, mine and others, is this. If I take a situation like that, one, my craving for chocolate will start to go away. Because instead of giving into the craving, every time that happens, I'm turning instead to God in prayer. I'm not praying about my craving for chocolate. In fact, I've got my mind on something completely different. I'm praying for Joe the butcher. So, number one, I'm blessed by the fact that the craving for chocolate starts to go away. Number two, almost always you will very quickly start to see God move in Joe at the butcher shop, because God will be answering prayer. All right, things will be starting to happen. So it's a win-win, and the idea is that when the enemy brings temptation, when the enemy brings something against you, you're going to turn it around, and you're going to, through prayer, attack the enemy's strongholds, attack the enemy's kingdom by praying for someone's salvation or praying for a situation like that. And so the enemy doesn't want to attack you about chocolate because you're attacking him about Joe's salvation or whatever it is, okay? So all I can tell you is using prayer targets like that has been very effective for both myself and other people. And like I said, credit to whoever, I think it was Rick Renner, don't remember. And then understand this, prayer changes things, kind of what I was referring to there. And things change. Both are true. So when I can pray for those who would be disrespectful or despiteful towards me, with not showing respect, mistreat me intentionally. Now, I'm not overthinking it, but when I can pray for someone who's in the enemy category, I can love them enough to pray for them. And you don't always have to love their personality, but you need to be able to love their soul. That's what we're really called to do, is love their soul. Like Christ is a soul lover, we need to love their soul. When I do that, not only does that change me, not only does it potentially change them, but it also makes me maybe more aware of the changes that God is sending in life and in the circumstances in general. All right, things change. God changes things, and he changes them in the suddenlies. And one of the places we can really lose hope and start losing faith is when we start assuming that there is no hope, there is no change, there is nothing that's going to be different, and we get stuck in this idea that it's nothing changes. And that is not true. Things change every single day of our life. And it's when we stop being able to see that change, it's when we stop being able to trust God for a change, when we start overthinking and looking too far into the future without any knowledge of what the future really holds, that we get locked into that position where there's no hope, there's no change. So as I actively am being merciful and how I live my life, I'm showing love towards even the people that aren't quote unquote lovable for me, but I show love towards them. I do good. I do what's right. I do the best I can that way. I do good. And I pray for those, even those who misuse me or abuseful, disrespectful kind of way. I pray for them. It changes everything. It changes me. It changes them. It starts changing the situation. And it opens up hope where there wasn't hope before. So this is an important set of things that I can do as I begin to pray, and pray in all situations. The more we pray, the better. The stronger our prayer life is, the stronger we will become. The more we're communicating with God, trusting God, and allowing him to change us, the better things are going to go. And make no mistake about it, when I pray, not only does God move in the situation I'm praying about, but God moves in me as well. It opens me up for God to speak to me, to work with me, to help my attitude, to let me see his compassion, etc. It changes things when I pray. And so I would say, even when my brain overthinks it and says, well, I'm justified in being upset with this person, etc., that I should pray and pray for them and allow God to speak to me and allow God to change me as I pray for them. And as I do all of those things, God moves in the situation and everything has the opportunity to get better. It's a better situation all the way around. From their side, my side, the total, just my outlook, everything gets better when I put it into that situation. Now, for the believer that wants to follow Christ and be a true disciple, this is a great verse for us to look at. Come up a little higher, step up, love, do good, pray, even to the people that are not nice to you. Okay. For the casual person who's not sure how committed they really are, but they're hoping they can have some fire insurance from going to hell, etc., you are missing the opportunity to have God's peace and really see God move, because you're holding God at arm's length and saying, well, I'm not sure that I want to, I don't know if I want to be considered a true Christian, or I don't know if I want to go to church and all the. Let God start changing you. Walk in these steps. Ask God to open things up and show you, because that's where the peace comes from. As we grow closer to Christ, we get more peace, more joy, more hope, more strength. All those things start to come along, and it not only becomes easier to try and step up a little higher, but it also becomes desirable to try and step up a little bit higher. That's part of the changes that take place in me. I want to see you out there living your best life. I want to see you out there close, communion with God, with knowing you're free, knowing you're saved, not carrying around a bunch of grudges and past and trash and all the nonsense, but be able to show mercy and love, do good, and pray for those. All of those, just be praying constantly for those that are out there. And the more you pray, the easier it is to pray. Okay. And I want to see those things going on in your life. It is so freeing. It is so great. Doing these things doesn't mean that you never have a problem. Doesn't mean you live this perfect, blessed life where you never have to deal with anything uncomfortable or whatever. That is not true. But what is true is I can live a life where I can have faith in God, I can have hope, and I can have peace in spite of the storms, in spite of the things that come along. I can trust in God, and not in a phony baloney way, but have a true rooted peace and joy, and be able to love and all of those things. Will I have difficult days? Yes, but I can walk in that, and that is a way better life than the one where you're keeping score and dragging around all the past baggage and all the nonsense. So that's it for this week. I hope you'll take these words to heart and let God begin to minister to you and to your situations as you love, do good, and pray. And that's it for this week.